Blood on the Tracks is an anxiety-inducing psychological thriller about a troubled boy and his obsessive, controlling mother. The series is written by Shuzo Oshimi, who is well known for his unsettling works and distinct art style. This story is definitely not for the weak. While it starts off in a way that is thrilling and intense, it grows darker and more grim as you push on through its 17-volume run. The first thing you'll see in this series, and through my video overview of the physical volumes, is the drawings, which stand out to me as a high point in many aspects. Blood on the Tracks features a very small cast of characters, and much of the tension and interest comes from understanding their thoughts and reading their emotions. Because of this, facial expressions are important to be captured well, which the author nails. The look on characters' faces can at times be so contorted and disturbing that I was eager to flip the page, yet simultaneously frozen with disgust. There are few examples I can think of across my collection of manga where I so distinctly remember the shape of a character's face simply to convey an emotion. Beyond that, the series takes lots of creative liberty to depict mental states in surreal ways, almost as if we are experiencing their distorted worldviews and twisted thoughts firsthand. Other particularly interesting moments to read were the visual representations of sensory experiences. For example, at one point our young protagonist boy is consumed by the smell of a girl at his school, and you can see the wafts of her scent overwhelming the page. Frequently also during cold or intimate moments, breath is drawn, which enhances the feeling of closeness and gives panels quite a tactile feeling. Sometimes you will get drawings from the character's point of view, and the world is completely blurred with brilliant line work to show their mind is in a fuzzy state. Full page panels and double page spreads are frequently found to give you time to sit with the imagery in a large detailed format. And lastly, on the topic of art, I really appreciated the subtle shift of character designs as they age. For the most part, it happens gradually before your eyes, and I would all of a sudden notice how naturally they have developed, flipping back to earlier volumes and comparing what to me was a very believable change. The story for Blood on the Tracks is partway between a tense thriller and a depressing character study on family trauma and mental illness. At the beginning of the series, I was reading it because it was exciting, but by the end, even as the pace slowed, I continued because I was very invested in these characters and it was more emotionally riveting. It was a tragic coming-of-age character study that had me both pitying and rooting very strongly for the protagonist. Initially, the hook of the story is one of many nightmare-esque sequences where a horrible and regrettable action takes place that this young boy must keep a secret. From there, you explore the intense and demented relationship between him and his mother, to whom he is highly dependent on. The stakes continue to grow through a series of bad dreams come to life, and the pacing for the first act especially moves at a breakneck speed, much in part to its minimal dialogue and bias towards large panels. While some chapters individually would cover a tiny amount of narrative ground, it would still feel quick considering I could breeze through an entire volume in 30 minutes before bed. I couldn't imagine reading this series weekly since some entire chapters may just be a single conversation or something similarly minor in terms of advancing the overall plot. However, since the point of the story is exploring the mental state of these people, smaller moments can still be important to sit with. Characters you come to care for make such regrettable decisions that in any other situation would just be seen as morally reprehensible, but having these ugly, brutal depictions of mental illness helps you see them as victims more than anything. And it's interesting to see how these destructive mental states can spread trauma to those around them. It's said that the way you see yourself physically is different from how others do, which is why often you may not like the way you look in photos since it goes against your constructed concept of self. The story makes use of this interesting idea where characters are made to look differently based on whose perspective you're viewing them from and their feelings towards them. This can be especially haunting during moments where the veil drops and we see versions of these people that feel familiar but slightly more grotesque. I found this super fascinating. To me, the mix between metaphoric sequences and sober realism was great as well. There could be long trippy periods of time inside someone's mind, and the contrast to reality would be jarring to return to. These extended cerebral sequences reminded me at times of Evangelion. I've been very positive on the story so far, but now I'll share my handful of gripes or even just small things to note that might not mesh well with some readers. To start, it feels a little long for the concept it wants to explore. This can at times undermine the tension around the middle of this series, since the stakes begin to lose their edge if we've made our way through countless unnerving moments without a truly negative or impactful resolution to these events. Next is that character growth can also loop or stall a bit at times. To be fair, I'm torn on this because I think it could actually be seen as intentional and, if anything, more accurate and purposeful to the depiction of mental illness. Having a breakthrough, then regressing makes sense, but too many times and I wonder what we are narratively working towards. I also want to give some warnings for light sexual content and more serious depressive imagery. The story gets bleak, and that might not be for everyone. I picked up this series to expand my range of manga reading and balance out my collection away from being too shonen heavy. And while I certainly do not regret reading it and shared lots of notable praise, I don't think this series necessarily reaches the heights of being something I can easily recommend to most. With my last reviewed series, Frieren, I find it very easy to imagine a wide audience finding something to enjoy. With Blood on the Tracks, I really do think you need to be more geared towards enjoying these types of slow burn, tense psychological dramas. If this series was condensed to be half as long, I feel that I could more readily recommend this to others. I found the exploration of mental illness very interesting, but short of profound. I found the emotional component riveting, but not completely devastating. While I do note that the story could be more appealing if it was condensed, I can still quite vividly recall the entire flow and major plot points easily, which I think is a strength to the impact and distinctness of each mini arc. If you like this sort of story, or are looking intentionally to broaden your horizons, or just want to see some really unique and haunting art, I don't think you can go wrong with Blood on the Tracks. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on various video games and manga series, make sure to like and subscribe so I can see you in the next one.